I couldn't stay away. This is my second broadcast of the day. Afternoon, in the heat of the afternoon, I will sip some water from now and then, if you'll forgive me. I just need to remember to stay hydrated. Shout out to all of you out there in equally challenging, glorious summer heat. I was inspired, compelled to appear yet again the second time today because the need to share wasn't patient enough to wait till tomorrow, and started thinking of fears and the sources of fears and how we've let fears control our life and how fears play such an important part in most of our lives. And on the path to spiritual inquiry, you must first face these fears, not conquer them, wrong term, dismiss them out of hand. Because if anything is illusory, if anything is relegated to the realms of illusion, of true Maya, it's these fears that so many of us hold on to for the dear life. And it's truly liberating to work on your fears by facing them. This is where serious, rigorous self-inquiry assists, facing the fears. Step one, a daunting task, not one to be particularly relished, but if you want a place to begin, if you're looking for a place to begin, well, all roads lead to Rome, don't they? It's within this fear that resides our ultimate liberation. So I called it Trail of Fears. And of course, I like to play with words. If you look at my titles, whimsical. I love wordplay. And I love combining concepts, finding use. So this trail of fears is another way to name your spiritual inquiry, because it will lead you through the forest of fear. And I'd be remiss in my responsibilities that I borrowed this title from a black period in American history, where for 30 years, from 1850 to 1880, I want to double check that, nix that, earlier than that, 1830 to 1850, pre-revolutionary war, just on the boundaries of the war. The Cherokee, people from the southeastern United States, Georgia, the Carolinas, Florida, were forced to walk, leave their homes, and go to a place that the government had designated for them. And along this walk, many died. They were leaving their ancestral homes behind them. And you can imagine, one can only imagine, or we really can imagine, not modern transportation. Whatever you could carry was all you could bring, but leaving your ancestral home. And like most indigenous native people, the land holds great import to the people, great significance. So here we go. Trail of fears. I'm using this again just because I want to keep it factual. I don't want to have to do housekeeping again. Come back and say, oh, by the way, I had those dates wrong. 1830 to 1850, Trail of Tears. Cherokee, amongst other native people, and including ex-slaves who had found refuge in these Indian communities, acceptance, given a place, raised children, and many proud Americans can trace their beginnings to these runaway slaves and the largesse, the greatness of the people that would take them in, not only take them in, but make them part of what and who they were. So it's a tribute to this yet another dark history of America. But fears. What is the basic source of fears? How do we categorize fears? And in the act of categorizing, we put some kind of measurement on the mother of all fears, which is death. Death being the great unmentionable. Here in Taiwan, where I'm living, death is forbidden to be not only spoken about, but even thought about, especially among the denizens of the aging population who are, like myself, closer to the end than the beginning. And we'll talk about that another day, which kind of segues beginnings and ends have been interesting. And we can measure that in terms of birth and death. So let's take a look at fears. Probably, I don't know about you, but what put me on my journey of spiritual inquiry, my first step was predicated by entertaining the big questions. Who am I? What am I? Where am I going? What's it all about? Remember that movie? Those of you old enough? What's it all about, Alfie? Yeah, this kind of search for meaning. big questions. We talk about people in their 40s who are re-examining their lives, the meaningfulness or lack thereof. Well, I didn't wait for middle life to entertain these questions. I was a busy little guy, full of big questions. And I remember I quickly learned not to articulate, not to ask people, because the looks I got taught me it's better not to broach these topics. But I was busy with them. So that first thing, now for me, not knowing who you are is said to be one of the foundations of fear. Not knowing who you are is a beginning of the inquiry. So maybe I was prompted to ask these questions, the big questions. Who am I? Because obviously I didn't know. If we knew who we are, we wouldn't even start the inquiry. We just embrace what is so, and what we ultimately have always known, will always know to be so, the truth of who we are. But this fear of the unknown, not knowing, is fertile grounds for the tree of fear, if you will, the beginning of the trail of fears. They accumulate and seem to get more intense as we move from one stage of fear to another. Attachment, clinging to the impermanent, whether it's relationships or status or family or professions or education, clinging to these. It's the clinging itself. That's fear-based, let's be honest here. It's the clinging, attachment. And along with this attachment is the growth of expectations. We're told from a very early age that we should expect hard work, diligence pays off, and we'll get the rewards. The Christians are promised that if they live a good life, that they'll reap their reward upon passing, upon dying, as they're into the glorious realms, the heavenly realms. This is the promise that the church makes. I was always, at best, dubious of these kind of promises, because I wondered what they knew that I didn't. And now, more importantly, how did they know what I didn't? What turns out a simple belief. But belief and clinging seem to be intertwined, tempered by expectations. We're expecting something, and when we don't get it, we're disappointed, crushed sometimes. But underneath this clinging to the impermanent, mistaking that which is temporary with permanence, wanting to find permanence is the motivation here. However misdirected it gets because we search for permanence in the temporary, in the impermanent. And good luck with that. So this attachment, and attachment is just another, probably nicer, cleaner word for desire. Because a desire puts attachment into the realms of emotion. You become invested in expectations. You become invested in attachments. You become so closely identified with your attachments in the hopes, the futile hopes, that you'll find your purpose. You'll find out who you are and what you are. Noble goals, but you won't find them no matter how attached you are or whether or not you believe in them, or no matter how strong your desire. And it's funny in our world. We're really rewarded to develop courage and rewarded to develop these false hopes. The promise of rewards. Be it heavenly or be it more on a mundane, secular way. Secular representation. So it's this clinging, it's desire. And with the hopes of, number one, not knowing who we are. This is a attempt to define ourselves, to understand who we are. A companion, although we could almost put it in a polarity, couldn't we? Desire, aversion. Desired outcome, desired goal. Adverse, an aversion to the opposite. So this aversion is just as illusory as desire and no more productive. Hoping that something will come true, desire. Hoping that something won't come true, aversion, desire, aversion. And we could do our, by now, routine experiment with polarities. Where does desire end, aversion begin? Or aversion morphs into desire, it morphs back the other way. I'm sure I'm going to have an endless supply of these polarities because somewhere in the acceptance of non-duality, this has played an important and key role at my current level of growth. Spent a lot of time and keep getting more and more of these coming. So, when does a desire become an aversion? When is something that you want so desperately becomes something that you don't want with equal desperation? So this is the third phase of this fear. And our old friend ego, surprise, surprise, comes to the forefront. Here, it's identification. Identifying with the ego. That's who I am. Recognizing your artificially constructed view of yourself and the world around you. Your cursory understanding of yourself and the world around you. Misidentification in the process of seeking your identity. Now, if you can't see that all these things are fertile grounds for fear, I suggest that you take another look. But the solution of this conundrum, this confusion, is oftentimes born of desperation when all else fails. Let's take a deep look at ourselves. Let's get past the ego. In fact, let's dismiss it out of hand, knowing that it's no more real than the pie in the sky, than your desires, your aversions, your fears. Your fears have no fuel. They have no source to sustain them. If you go and look at the fertile ground I talked about, where we put the seeds of fear and let them go insane, and resulting in a tree of fear, a tree with branches that's blocking your view, a tree that will suck the life out of you. This tree of fear that starts off with the planting of the seed, and that is not knowing who we are. When you figure out whatever of the 4 yogas works for you, when you don't figure it out, when you're inspired, when you're gifted. Mine was jhana yoga, rigorous self-inquiry. Who am I? And methodically discarding who I am not. It's much simpler in this process to discover who you're not on the way to discover something that you've always known. And when you do discover it, you just go, I knew that. Isn't it annoying sometimes when you hear people say, I knew that, after you tell them something? I knew that. Of course you did. There's nothing new under the sun. Everything that has been, will be, and is known is available to each and every one of us at any given moment. This is the beauty of ordinariness. It's embracing this ordinariness. And it's usually, embracing ordinariness usually comes after you've awoken to what you've always known by this gift, by this eye-opening process. You'll be liberated. And I left the biggest fear for last, even though I addressed it in the beginning, the fear of death. Once you understand the nature of who you are, that is infinite, that is permanent, that it has no beginning or no end, that is continuous, that is spiraling ever upward, with a few, probably necessary, spiraling downward. Need to bring you back to earth sometimes. So this discovery of what you've always known, this aha moment punctuated with the exclamation, I knew that. I know that. In the face of this knowledge, in the face of what's real, having evaluated and discarded what's not real, within the realness, within the universalization, within the knowledge and embracing this knowledge as it blossoms into wisdom, that we are one, we are whole, we are not divided, we are permanent, we will persevere, we will continue in some expression, ever evolving, ever expanding. I like to think of physics here, the Big Bang. Life begins with a Big Bang, and you could see the analogy to us as a baby. Bah! Unlimited potential. And we continue to expand and expand and expand. And it seems to me that there is an ending to this universe that we see, that somehow we get glimpses of, even though the scale is too huge. And the ending is the little whimper, the opposite, the polarity of the Big Bang is the little whimper. And this universe, our understanding of this universe at least, will go out because it just will expand. But death, apparent death, the act of dying, is only introducing new opportunities, new alternatives to try again. A do-over, if you will. So, death is in the same category. It appears my personality is gone. My body will feed the worms. Or not. I want to be burned up and my ashes scattered in some places that I love. But no less than being worm food, I will be dust for the soil, nutrients for new growth, as it should be. Just as our universe that began with a Big Bang and ends in a little whimper will be the foundation, the minerals, the substance for another expression. And these expressions are spirals of opportunity. So fears go to rest, are put to rest. The big fear of dying, when you realize that you're part of permanence. Not your little ego. You'll discard that as being a essentially useless companion, and your personality disappears. My favorite analogy is the huge ocean with a little hitting a rock and little drops of water splash up and then merge with all that is. Such is our life. There goes our personality. But it's not for naught. Not for naught. N-O-T-N-A-U-G-H-T. Not for naught. Cute. Play on words. It's not for nothing. Because our personality, just as the elements of my body, our personality contribute to all that there is, adds to everything. All that there is can be added to. Now, if that's not food for thought, I really have no idea. So, the journey of self-inquiry is most times tough. Some rewards. More do-overs. More taking a step back and trying again. Until that the very effort of trying becomes a trap. It becomes a desire. The true secret is surrendering to what is so.